Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside Ashley Mailloux with producer Lucia helping us out as we head on over to Del Mar to take a look at race number 9 for Saturday. It's the Grade 2 Yellow Ribbon. And Ashley, when we were handicapping this race, I made a note right off the bat. There is zero early pace in this race. We'll take a look at the projector in just a minute, but not a lot of horses in here who want to go to the lead, who are used to running on the lead. I mean, these are all mid-pack horses or deeper closers. It is one of those things where it's like, hey, you want to bet $1 on who's even going to get the lead in here? Like it could be one of a few horses, I think, whoever actually takes the initiative.
Yeah, I have no idea. I also think the other caveat to this whole sort of I want to call it a mess, but it's kind of a mess to
It
handicap is
is.
the distance, a mile and a 16th. You have horses that they've been competitive, they've been going longer, or horses that even love it at Santa Anita but haven't had the same success at Del Mar. So there's a lot going on. I think the other thing to point out really quickly, Gino, is sometimes when we focus in on California racing on the dirt, you see a lot of Bob Baffords. Look at the field here. Half of the field made by trainer Phil D'Amato in this group has the 1, 4, 6, and the 7. So just an interesting note here in the yellow ribbon.
A couple of them coming off long layoffs too, so tricky reads. You take a look at the pace projector. You don't see it like this too often, where it's just like no speed. They just spell it right out for you. They're public assembly, maybe by default. Mission of Joy is a horse, Ashley, who at least used to have some tactical speed at one point in her career, but she hasn't been showing it recently. It really, I think, is going to come down to intent. I'm just assuming one of the Phil D'Amato charge will take the initiative and try to get aggressive. But I mean, your guess is as good as mine,
I can agree with this and I can't disagree with it because I
right?
just don't really know. I do think public assembly out of the two, to me, makes more sense that she's
Agree.
going to go based on her races.
Yep.
That's about all I can say. The rest of this, I think, is kind of irrelevant. I really don't have the slightest inkling of an idea.
And we can meet the field now for the Grade 2 Yellow Ribbon, $200,000 up for grabs. This is going to go as race number 9 on Saturday at Del Mar. We start out with Hang the Moon for CJ Thoroughbreds, one of the 4 D'Amato runners in here. Last year, Ashley, this one got really good. Put together a string of 4 races, including a couple graded stakes wins with the John C. Maybe and the Rodeo Drive back to back. So heading into the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, she was in very nice form. That race was a little bit too tough. I'm not going to hold that one against her. The race afterwards was a little disappointing when she was the heavy favorite. She was last in the field of 6 there, but she's been off since December. So this kind of feels like a starting point for me. I didn't really know if she'd be ready to win, but I do think that it's a good spot because she could run here, get a couple opportunities to try to run and get herself into the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, you go to this time last year, some of her best performances were at Del Mar. She's one that in the time form US pace projection off the top of my head, I think is second from last early on. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Just looking at her form off the layoff last time out, she's only 2.5 off of it. Then she sort of got almost a mid-pack trip in her first start at Del Mar. Got the inside. Maybe she's sitting, I don't know, mid pack in this field and tries to make a late run. I think she's very talented. I think she might need a race, but based on what we saw in her form last year, I think for me, she's probably a horse to use underneath. I think a win, I'd be a little shocked by it, but again, it's going to come down to trip.
From a class standpoint, her best races last year would really fit with
Mhm.
this group. Is she ready to fire one of those? Last 5 years, trader Phil D'Amato on a plus 180-day layoff, 20%. So solid. When you kind of sharpen that up and you look at just graded stakes, Ashley, just 3 for the last 22 in graded stakes races. So a little bit different. It's obviously harder to win a graded stakes, especially coming off a layoff, but a couple numbers to keep an eye on. Heredia feels like it's a pretty good spot for her shipping across the country, coming off of a race at Saratoga. This is a horse, Ashley, who back in 2023 was a Group 3 winner and was Group 1 placed and was facing some really nice horses overseas, had a year and a half layoff, showed up in the Bogey, thought ran pretty well in that race, finishing third behind Dynamic Pricing, who comes out that one to win. There were actually a couple next out winners in there. 3 of them, Dynamic Pricing won a grade 1, Spaladay, even the 7th finisher came back to win their next start. Then in the De La Rose, I thought another pretty nice performance last time out behind Deep Satin. Just feels like this horse is improving with those races now, shaking some of the rust off. I wouldn't be shocked to see her take a nice step forward.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting when this horse raced, say, in the Group 1 overseas before coming over, came over and went right back to work about 4 months later, had some works, and then had over 10 months off. So obviously had a pretty big setback And then obviously, I think when you look at dynamic pricing and sort of the return race, I think they thought that, this is one that has some talent. I think she's run fine in both of her races. She had a little bit of time off once again to regroup, but nothing crazy between the May race and the July race. And now you're seeing her make her second start a month in between races. I like that for her. Again, it's going to come down to trip. It's really hard to look at her form prior to the long layoff and know if she's going to get any of that back, and then factor in her last two. She's been closing from off of it.
What's interesting about this race, it doesn't feel like there's anyone that's a standout, though. So if some of these horses are able to get to their best form, it would absolutely put them right in the mix. I know you liked Liguria a little bit last time when we talked about the Grade 1 Gamely, and I thought she ran pretty well that day, Ashley. She finished third. Nobody was beating Be Your Best, who got the tactical advantage on that group and opened up. And with Liguria, she's a multiple graded stakes winner. She fits really well in here. Her 3 races from McCarthy, they have all been good. And you kind of know what you're going to get from her. She's going to drop back. She's going to make one late run. Now, it doesn't look like there's that much early speed in here, but sometimes that's actually okay for closers, because if nobody separates in this field and the field's just evenly matched and they're only a couple lengths apart, she can come closing well and probably run them all down.
Yeah, we kind of looked at the stretch run here. She's not unable to fight off Lady Claypool for the runner-up placing, and I don't necessarily love that. She sort of hung a little bit, but she was getting an additional eighth of a mile compared to her prior start, which was almost 3 months earlier. Maybe she needed the race. I think she ran fine. This is class relief in some regard for her. And just go back down to her past performances. Obviously, she had issues. We never saw her as a 4-year-old filly, but her one effort at Del Mar was quite good. It was at the mile trip. She got a mid-pack trip. I'm hoping again, to me, I mean, you can't be too far off of it. And I know she closed pretty deep 2 and 3 starts back, but I have a feeling that Umberto Rispoli is going to be a little bit more aggressive with her and maybe just have her stalking the pace setter. So while I was disappointed last time out, Gino, I still think she's one that maybe I'll go back to the fountain with, because I think there is some upside with her.
Yeah, and I liked Public Assembly last time, and I'm going to go back to the well once again with Public Assembly, Ashley, because I don't really want to be too hard on any of the horses coming out of the Gamely. It just didn't shape up well for anyone to come from off the pace in there. Be Your Best was classier. Be Your Best is better than anyone in this field, so it is class relief for all of these horses coming out of that Gamely. And I feel like if we're playing Public Assembly off of the form going into the Gamely, where she just won the Royal Heroine, she had won back-to-back races, she might accidentally get the lead in here or be sitting in a really good spot just by default. So I'm willing to put a line through that Gamely, not really hold it against her too much. And in a race that's pretty competitive, I wouldn't be shocked to see her run well here, Ashley.
Yeah, and we bring up Be Your Best. I mean, she was the best, but she's just a mare that's dangerous on the front end. You look at some of the spots that she was in. For her, was a new sort of situation coming out to Santa Anita, but she looked tough in there. She was extremely tough, and I would agree. I don't think you can hold it against Public Assembly. I think when you go to the races prior to that, we kind of talked about it in terms of the pace projector. She has a real chance here to be forward from the gate, and if she is not pressured, that could be dangerous when you go back to those efforts, say at Keeneland or Kentucky Downs back in 2024. I think
Yeah.
you at least have to talk to her about her from a pace perspective, but I think you also have to respect her for that reason.
Watchtower has not raced since January in the Pegasus. This is a filly who had won the Grade 3 Autumn Miss. She was in nice form, but then she stepped up and was in the American Oaks and then the Pegasus World Cup filly and mare turf. Those are probably a little too tough for her, Ashley. So I'm not going to hold those against her, but this is now a 6+ month layoff for her. She hasn't raced since January, and she would have to run maybe her best or one of her absolute best races to be competitive here.
Yeah, I don't want to say she's pace dependent, because when you go back to the race September 2nd at Del Mar, I don't know, that's pretty moderate. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just kind of even sort of quarters in there, and she was still able to close from the back of the pack. But then you go to her next 2 starts, she did get the pace to develop in front of her. One of them resulted in a win when they did go quite quick. We're almost 45-3, really 45-2 when you look at it. And we're talking about a paceless race. We're talking about a horse off the layoff. She is working, it looks like, very, very well. But I think if you like her here, you have to demand value.
Mission of Joy is next up. She's a multiple graded stakes winner, but she's just won for her last 12. She was favored in Grade 1 races in 2023. I remember when she was a major player in some of those races, and she used to have more tactical speed, but she's really just tailed off form right now. Most recently, she was in the Nassau. That was a live race as the second place finisher, Ready for Shirl, came back to win the Grade 2 Canadian next time out. maybe she could end up being one of the D'Amatos that they try to get aggressive with if they just have a plan for one of the horses to try to be forwarding here. I wanted to try to get to her, Ashley, because she has some back class, but I couldn't make as strong of a case for her in her recent form.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You can maybe say, well, she didn't like the EP Taylor. Okay. I don't know if that's true. But then you look at her performance in the Ms. Liberty at Monmouth, and the winner, Spaladay, kind of bounced off of that effort when we saw that one most recently in the Grade 3 Matchmaker. So I don't know how much I love that race at Monmouth in general as a whole, and the fact that she didn't fire. She didn't even beat one horse in there as a favorite. So a little bit of a tough sell. I thought her return to the races, she did what she should have done. And then now, how do you assess her? She's another one that's again a tough sell. I can try to make the excuses, but I would need to see a run from her now for the new connections to be able to assess her better.
Musical Rhapsody is a stakes winner, grade 3 placed. She's now coming into this race off about a year layoff, though, and she would probably need to run a career best because when we saw her previously, she wasn't really facing graded stakes company all that much. She was facing horses maybe a cut below that. So I could see a decent effort, maybe this setting her up for something later on in the meet or next month.
Yeah, and she was, a mare that was racing at those distance races, right? And always
Yep.
having to typically face Linda's Gift and not necessarily being on the winning end of it, but a very consistent type nonetheless. I have a feeling this is just a regroup, making that first start in nearly a year. Use the mile on a 16th and then sort of pinpoint where you want to go from here.
Yep, get a fitness race in. And that's another thing that you were pointing out when we started handicapping this race. Some of these horses are better going longer or maybe used to going longer. That's what Musical Rhapsody has been doing. Even a horse like Mahina, we've seen her now stretch out going longer. When she's been going a mile and a half and a mile and a quarter, she's able to show more tactical speed. But when they cut her back to races like this, a mile and a 16th, she'll probably be a little bit farther back because she's not that fast. She's very consistent, though, Ashley. She's multiple graded stakes place. She just missed last out. It was a wicked beat. If you backed her, she was looking for room. She ducked down to the inside. She stuck her nose in front with like 10 yards to go before the wire and then just got nailed. So I respect what she's been doing, but then I question race shape and the cut back with her. She's a tricky read.
She's a tricky read, and you bring up the distance. That's one of the aspects to it. I mean, obviously, I think longer distances might be more up her alley, especially a mile and a quarter, even a mile and an eighth. If there's pace set up, I don't think a mile and a 16th is an issue for a horse like her. But the other thing that was just slightly concerning, and maybe I'm reading into it a little too much because her recent form is quite good, is her record at Del Mar. That was a complete, I guess,
Great.
turn off for me. 0 for 5 on the turf in the money there. She seems to really like Santa Anita. With that in mind, huge fan of her. Just couldn't back her given the track and then the distance.
And when you're in a race like this, where it feels like there are a lot of competitive horses, you're looking for little things like that, right? Maybe she's just not quite as good on the turf at Del Mar, and that might be the difference between winning and losing or finishing second and third in a race like this, where you can make a case for many in here. So as we move to selections, Ashley, how are you going to stack them up in this one?
Going back to Liguria, this is a really tricky race. I think if
Yeah.
you come in here and you say, I can pick the try straight, you're a genius. It's just going to come down to race flow. And I think the connections, as we know, are going to be mindful of that. And I think you're going to see things that you can look at the past performances all day long. You're not going to be able to sort of predict what's going to happen. And with Liguria, I do think the trip is probably going to be one somewhat closer to the pace, maybe mid-pack, maybe stalking, the top two in this field early and then trying to make a move. And I like this race for her based in terms of just her second start since March. There's some upside there and have to see the value. I mean, we handicapped this without the line, Gino. It's going to be a pretty tough morning line to come up with.
Yeah, if you can pick the trifecta, awesome. If you can tell me the top 3 horses going into the first turn, that's also going to be impressive in this race, just based on how it's going to shape up. So we'll both go back to a couple of our old friends. For me, 4-2-3-6 Public Assembly on top. For Ashley, 3-1-4-2 with Liguria on top. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment down below and let us know. Who do you like in this one? Good luck on Saturday.